Hi, and welcome back to Ronnie the Reader. Today we are going over the third part of my little mini series I've had going on for the last week or so here on the channel, talking about some book/fandom related dramas. Today we are going to be tackling probably our most famous drama, but probably the one that's the longest. So we'll see how long this video actually turns out. And so today we are going to be going over Msscribe. So if you're not familiar with Msscribe at all, basically what this has to do with is fan fiction, fandom, and Harry Potter, and a whole lot of lies, essentially. So we are going to be kicking it all the way back to 2002. 2001, 2002. We're going to start our story a little bit in 2001, and then a lot of it's going to be 2002 to 2003, and then so on and so forth. So kind of let's get started with a little bit of a backstory or background. So in like the late 90s, early 2000s, the first four Harry Potter books had come out. This of course was Sorcerer's Stone, Chamber of Secrets, Prisoner of Azkaban, and then Goblet of Fire came out in 2000. And then Order of the Phoenix did not come out until 2003. But in between that kind of break, especially in the year 2000, a lot of fandoms popped up, and it was back then not condensed into kind of specific spots. Really, you could have a fandom and create a fandom anywhere you could create a website or a forum, essentially. And so Cassandra Clare, who is, yes, that Cassandra Clare, was very, very big in the Harry Potter fandom. And if I do decide to continue this series, I definitely will be covering Cassandra Clare. So I'm not going to get too much into her right now, but she was one of what was called like a big name fan back in the day in this Harry Potter fandom. And her friends were known as the inner circle, if you will, of these kind of fandom websites. And there were multiple. There was one called Fiction Alley. There was one called Gryffindor's Tower. All of these fandom or subset forums included fan fiction, and people were very divided on what they liked in their fan fiction. Some people were canon only. Some people did not want any sort of smut or anything like that. Some people were kind of very serious about who they shipped with who. Remember, this is before Order of the Phoenix, and so kind of endgame couples in the Harry Potter world like really weren't a thing yet. They weren't necessarily established, so people were shipping Harry Hermione, Hermione Ron, Harry Ginny, like all of those kind of like couples that you would think have the possibility of getting together. And so in the midst of all of this, there's a bunch of drama. Once again, not getting too much into Cassandra Clare's bit, but Cassandra Clare basically wrote this like really scathing review of a particular fan fiction written by someone, and then that guy's wife basically stalked and harassed Cassandra Clare, which is important because we then get our main character on the scene, Msscribe, who appears in late 2002. And she did write some fan fictions, but her main bread and butter were these overly dramatized, overly sensationalized stories about her life that she was writing. So essentially she was writing like blog posts as well as fan fiction. I think the most famous one that is cited in modern day retellings of Msscribe, which all of this kind of information and documentation has been really well preserved by someone named Charlotte Lennox, who basically has this like book online called I think it's the Unauthorized Biography of Msscribe. It's a really great read. I did read it in preparation for this video, and then also a lot of those longer form videos out there use it as a really great, almost primary source. But essentially, Charlotte describes Msscribe's writing in a really elaborate way, and there's this one particular story that Msscribe wrote on her blog about being called to her daughter's daycare because her daughter and another girl at the daycare were caught kissing, and that other girl's mother was like a devout Christian and basically came into this daycare and said like, our children are going to hell, this is ridiculous. And Msscribe has this witty comeback where she more or less along the line says, well, your daughter might be gay, but mine's just experimenting. And then she says, daycare lady chokes back laughter. So you can kind of get the sense of the writing a little bit there. Very much so, like I said, over dramatized, but it became really captivating People did enjoy it. There seems to be some main fangirls, if you will, of Msscribe's writing that pop up that seem to be promoting her around the internet at the time, if you will. And I'm not going to bury the lead. If you don't know the story of Msscribe, I'm basically going to spoil it right here up the front so you can keep it in the back of your mind as we go through the whole story. But essentially, all of the people we are basically about to talk about are fake. So these fangirls are fake. We have stalkers and internet harassers. They're all fake. They were all sock puppets of Msscribe, which is essentially like fake accounts that were created to kind of draw up attention and push herself forward in this community, which is diabolical, but it's also so smart. Like, Girly Pop knew what she was doing. She had a goal. The goal was, I want to be a big name fan and I want to be in this inner circle. So I see Cassandra Clare getting stalked and harassed and getting all of this attention. Well, I'm going to get stalked and harassed and get all of this attention to the extreme. And she seems to have specifically picked like these weirdo, devout, religious people who also were obsessed with Harry Potter. And I've seen this pointed out in multiple other retellings of this story. Like, I just don't believe that that group of people exists. You're telling me that there is this group of devout Christians out there that view Harry Potter, a book about witchcraft and magic, as sacred text, yet they also say if you're gay, black, lesbian, whatever the hell, if you're not a white Anglo-Saxon American, you're going to hell. You're telling me that these same group of people also love Harry Potter? It just doesn't compute. It just doesn't make sense. And while I'm sure there are religious people out there who enjoy Harry Potter, we are talking about those very, very extremist sects of religion that take things very extreme. Like, we all know the types of people I'm talking about. They are just not aligning with what Harry Potter is dishing out at the time. Like, for real. It's just not true. It's just not true. She creates all these accounts that are stalking her, harassing her. There is a couple of people, and basically she targets this particular group forum called Gryffindor Tower that I mentioned earlier. They're like our main key players because a lot of these issues were put on Gryffindor Tower, specifically because the guy from earlier, the husband of the woman who wrote the fanfiction that Cassandra Clare didn't like, they were part of Gryffindor Tower. Gryffindor Tower, though, was a really small, insular community. They did not interact much with the community. I believe Gryffindor Tower was a little bit more conservative. They didn't post a whole lot of smut. I don't believe they allowed, like, slash fiction. I think your fan fictions had to be canon compliant, or at least canon compliant. So you want to be on camera? This little guy is making so much noise while his dad's trying to record a video. Yeah. He's making so much noise. The cats are now wrestling. Going back to Msscribe, though, essentially she tried to paint this portion of Gryffindor Tower of all being, like, homophobic, very exclusatory to other groups of people and other groups of writers, and really just tried to paint them all around as, like, just bad people. And eventually Gryffindor Tower did completely shut down. It kind of, like, collapsed in on itself. I guess there was a lot of infighting over Gryffindor Tower, and I think a lot of this has been, like, a little bit lost to time as to, like, specifics because no one was, like, documenting it. But yeah, I just think that Gryffindor Tower lost the plot a little bit, if you will, and then they were eventually closed down. But essentially, Msscribe created these sock puppets over and over and over again from 2002 all the way to, like, 2004, 2005. There was a Nimbus 2003, I think, event, or maybe 2004. Essentially, it was like a meeting of the Harry Potter minds and the Harry Potter fandoms. And by this point, Msscribe had achieved the pinnacle of success that she wanted. Using these fake fan accounts, she kind of created these lists, one of which was called the Big Name Sinner list. And essentially, she created these lists and created these fake accounts to put herself on the same level as like a Cassandra Clare or another woman named Heidi, who was part of the inner circle, who's kind of an important piece of all of this. Msscribe herself, I guess I haven't talked too much about it, she made a lot of lies about her personal life as well. So I've already mentioned kind of the sensational writing, the daycare story, but she also claims to have worked for a Delaware senator. She also claims to have like suffered a lot of health issues, which of, you know, so there are some credibility to some not so much credibility in other accounts. But one of the like fake accounts that she had that she tried to pass off was real. Clarabella was the account name. Claims to have been a close personal friend of Msscribe, and to have met her specifically in person. And this turns out to not necessarily be true because Clarabella is not real. And the way that this all kind of came down on itself and how she was caught was your old classic IP tags, essentially. And so a lot of people for a couple of years had kind of thought there were things off with Msscribe and her stories and all of these weirdo harassing people that were just popping up randomly that would just create accounts and then suddenly started attacking Msscribe out of nowhere. Like that's the first and kind of only activity they had. And so then we have the unauthorized biography of Msscribe published. But essentially it lays everything out in the timeline order, including the initial investigation of the IP tag. And then Msscribe was able to kind of debunk this a little bit, but it did eventually come back and bite her in around 2006. And so basically, because of all of these things that came out, Msscribe essentially left the fandom completely. She did try to defend herself a little bit, but it just didn't go well because there was so much evidence against her, kind of essentially proving all of these stories to be fake, all of these accounts to be fake and created by her to pull off this scheme, which, like I said, was really diabolical, but also really ingenious in a lot of ways. She just completely fooled hundreds of people, had them believing everything she was doing for multiple years. And you know, we can sit here and speculate about like what her exact motives were. I think we can all believe that it was essentially just to kind of get her name out there and be part of this fandom list and be part of the big name fans and kind of have her name up in the lights, if you will. And she did achieve that for a little bit. So, you know, good on her for having a goal and going for it. You know, God forbid a woman succeed, am I right? But yeah, it was just completely crazy. And the story has kind of lingered on for a long time. As I mentioned, there are a lot of videos out there and kind of like posts on different websites about the Msscribe drama. I personally love kind of three particular videos that I will kind of pop the thumbnails here in. These three are some of my favorites that I watched both before ever thinking of doing this video and then when I was doing a little bit of research just to brush up on some things. To do a quick little recap, I watched these three as well as read the unauthorized biography, like I said. So that is it. So thank you so much for watching today's video, and that kind of concludes this little series I was doing for a little bit. So definitely let me know what you think of kind of these book drama, fandom drama videos. I did have a lot of fun doing them. I typically don't like script my videos. I have a little bit of an outline. And I just kind of like doing that. I liked kind of being a little bit off the cuff, like having, you know, something to follow a little bit, but being able to just kind of talk about these stories because I just think they are fun. Like, as much as people might not like it, I think a little bit drama like this is fun, where ultimately in all three of these stories, like, there was no major harm done. Yes, there was harm done, but no, you know, like jail time or illegal things were necessarily taking place in any of these situations. So while they're very serious and there were very serious topics covered in each, it ultimately does lean to a little bit more of the lighter side, which I'm always a fan of. So once again, thank you. And that is it for today's video. I will be back at you soon with another different kind of video that I normally post. And that is hopefully going to be a TBR video. So stay tuned for that one to see what I'm creating a TBR for. But until then, thank you so much. And yeah, I just can't wait to talk to you soon.